Welcome to today's webinar entitled Identity Theft, Repairing the Damage, Reducing Your Risk. We are thrilled to have Carol Candu-Pinata with us today. Carol has served in a variety of positions with the Federal Trade Commission since 1990. She began as an attorney bringing false advertising cases. She then became legislative counsel where she served as a liaison between the Commission and Congress on a variety of issues in the agency's jurisdiction. Currently, she is counsel in the FTC's Division of Consumer and Business Education, where she leads teams to create and distribute free resources, print materials, websites, social media, interactive content, audio, and video to help people spot, stop, and avoid fraud, manage their money, and make savvy decisions in the marketplace. She also builds outreach partnership with large organizations. Ms. Pinata earned her A.B. from Harvard College and her J.D. from Suffolk University Law School. Without further delay, I will turn things over to Carol.
Thank you, Stan. Hi, everybody. This is Carol Candu-Pinata from Federal Trade Commission. I'd like to thank you for tuning in this morning and listening. I know everyone's very, very busy, and I appreciate your time. I hope you'll come away with some new knowledge about identity theft and identity protection, and some tips that you can use for yourself or share with your family, friends, colleagues, clients, anybody you think might need them. So let me tell you a little bit about how FTC develops this information, just as some background. FTC is the nation's consumer protection agency, and we bring cases about things like false and deceptive advertising or deceptive marketing. We administer the National Do Not Call Telemarketing Registry. If it's a consumer protection issue, chances are FTC has got some involvement in it. And while we're bringing these cases and bringing workshops to learn about different issues in the marketplace, we learn an awful lot about fraud and consumer protection issues and how things evolve in the marketplace and how scams kind of change and develop over time. And we take that information and we turn it into practical, actionable tips. Things that you can actually use to either protect yourself, to make a better decision, to avoid a scam, to manage your money a little bit better. And we do that in a variety of ways. We put together print materials like booklets and brochures. We do websites, online social networking, videos, audio. Some campaigns, some issues rise to the level of needing all of those components. Sometimes we'll just do one or two of them, depending on the issue and the target and who we might be trying to reach. If there's a new twist on a particular topic, we might want to do a bigger push to let people know. But the goal is always to get the information out to as many people as possible. Let's get right to it now. You'll see in front of you a screen that's a disclaimer from DOD, just so that you know that the material doesn't come from Department of Defense. It's not endorsed by them. It's nothing that they've produced. It all comes from Federal Trade Commission. And while all the materials that I'll be discussing today and presenting are from the Federal Trade Commission, so today we're going to cover what is identity theft, what are the warning signs, what to do if your identity is stolen, and how to reduce your risk. What's identity protection all about? All right. So a lot of people are familiar with this concept at this point, but it bears repeating again, especially because it starts to morph and change, and there might be some confusion. But identity theft happens when somebody steals your personal information and they use it without your permission. And that can be a variety of different things. The keys to the kingdom are your Social Security number. That's always something that somebody could do a lot of damage with. But there could be other bits and pieces of information, your personal information, used with the Social Security number or alone that could still cause damage. Somebody could still commit fraud using your identity. And as you know, identity theft can damage your finances, your credit history, even your reputation. There have been some cases where people have been arrested for crimes they didn't commit. They identity theft, assumed their identity, and committed those crimes. For most people, it's not that extreme. They may be able to rectify the situation with a few phone calls and closing down a few credit card accounts. But for most people that suffer identity theft, the damage is going to fall somewhere in between. And we'll talk about how you can cope with that. So what are some of the warning signs of identity theft? Yeah, You'll see mistakes on accounts, whether it's a credit card account or a utility bill or just any one of your regular accounts. You see something that doesn't seem right. You expect a bill to come, or you expect to see certain charges on your statement if you go online to check them. And either there are weird things on the statement or those bills go missing. They just don't show up in the mail. And you're saying, I usually get this on the 15th of the month, and it's now 10 days late. I wonder what's up with that. You might get calls from debt collectors talking about debts that you don't recognize. They aren't yours. They're things that you know you didn't spend money on. You might get a notice from the IRS. And we'll talk a little bit more about that particular kind of identity theft in a few. You also might get calls or email or inquiries about accounts that are in the name of one of your minor children, so one of your children under 18. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about child ID theft later on, but that's clearly a warning sign. I think it used to be the case sometimes that people would get these calls and say, about your child's credit card account, and they would think it was just a mistake or somebody trying to market to them or just some kind of a computer error. And you really need to take those kind of inquiries seriously and do a little bit of follow-up. All right, so in order to talk a little bit later about protection, you want to have some idea why these warning signs happen, how identity theft actually happens. So the thieves can, it can be as simple as something like stealing your wallet, your purse, your military ID, on the back of a chair at a restaurant or out of, an unlocked cabinet, or if it was, just lying around in the open, somebody might have taken it and just either stolen the whole thing or just copied numbers down and put the cards back. They could steal information from your trash or from the trash of a business. They can call you or email you and try to trick you into revealing information. If they email you, they may say they're coming from a company that you do business with, and we need to check your account. Can you please send me your password? That's called a phishing attack. If somebody's phishing for information, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. They may pretend to offer a job, a loan, or an apartment. There may be some sort of a scam where they're not offering any of those things. They just want to get an application with all of your information on it and steal your identity. Okay, so let's talk about what to do if somebody has stolen your identity, if you suspect that there's a problem. The biggest thing for you to know is to act fast, okay? You want to take the steps that I'm going to talk about immediately. If you can act fast, you're going to have a much better chance of limiting the damage that they can do and of kind of stopping it in its tracks. Okay, and now's a good time for me to mention, if you suspect you're in identity theft and you need to, launch into action and take these steps, you also want to set up a really good filing system about now, because a lot of the recovery is going to depend on sending letters and making phone calls and compiling these forms that you may need to send out to various companies over and over again, and you're going to make your life a lot easier if you know where everything is in one place, if you have extra copies. If you send something out, you keep a copy of it. You keep a copy of every letter you send, every letter you receive. You want to keep a log of all the phone calls you make about your identity theft situation, the person you talk to, the company that they represent, what was said both ways, how things were left. If there's anything that you need to do to follow up, note anything that they promised to do to follow up. Any timelines involved. If they said, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks, you want to write that down, and you want to make a timeline. So you want to know, I'm supposed to hear from so-and-so by April 16th. Then I need to file this paperwork by April 30th. Then the company has until May 31st to get back to me. And if you don't hear from them by May 31st or June 1st, you want to call and follow up and find out what happened. I know it sounds a little overwhelming, but if you can start at the beginning and keep good records and write things down and keep your copies, you're going to make your life a lot easier down the road, and you probably will be able to stop the damage as quickly as possibly could happen. And when you're sending the letters, you want to send them certified mail, return receipt requested. That's another tip, so that you always have a record that somebody signed for and received that piece of mail. It's all part of your record keeping and your trail. Okay, so the first thing you want to do if your identity is stolen is you want to place an initial fraud alert on your credit report. Now, your credit report is like that snapshot in time on a particular moment of your credit file. So everything about you, how you pay your bills and all the different accounts you have with different vendors and your utilities and credit card companies and stores, information is being reported about you and how you pay those bills and the state of the accounts and your balances all the time. And when you ask for your credit report, it's a snapshot at that moment of what everybody is saying, what's in your file, what your credit history is. So the companies, the big three national companies that keep credit reports on you are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And in the slides, we have contact numbers for the fraud departments of those three credit reporting companies. So if you want to place an initial fraud alert, you can contact any one of those three nationwide credit reporting companies. Just pick up the phone, call, tell them I'm an identity theft victim, and ask to put a fraud alert on your credit file. And then you want to confirm with them that they will contact the other two companies. That's what they're supposed to do, but I think it's a good idea just to come right out and ask and make sure that you that they're going to do that for you. So placing that initial fraud alert is free, and it stays on your credit report for 90 days. So that buys you a little bit of breathing room. It makes it harder for an identity thief to open more accounts in your name. If there's an alert on there, a business has to verify your identity before it issues credit in your name, so it'll have to try to contact you, and you want to make sure that you give the credit reporting company, maybe a cell phone number or a good way to contact you, because that could be a clue. If somebody contacts you and tries to open credit, you might see what the identity thief is trying to do, trying to open more accounts in your name. And then you have the 90 days of protection, so that chances are they're not going to be able to open any accounts in your name. And you can go through the rest of these steps and try to rectify any damage they've already caused. So when you put the fraud alert on your credit report, you may also want to consider a credit freeze. And that's a different kind of a thing. That really, it's just what it says. It freezes your credit. So instead of just having to do extra work to verify the identity before they grant credit in your name, you won't be able to get any credit in your name if your credit is frozen. Now, it usually costs something to freeze your credit, and it's a more extreme solution. If you know somebody is running around opening accounts in your name, that may be a good option for you. You may want to freeze it down and stop it in its tracks so that you can then backtrack and see what else is going on with the theft. It doesn't affect your credit score, or you can still get a copy of your free annual credit report. You can open a new account or apply for a job or things like that. But there are some things that you won't be able to do with your credit report with a credit freeze. So you want to look into that a little bit and make sure that it's not going to interfere with any of your plans before you do it, because it is a more extreme solution. And it's a different process. If you want to get a credit freeze, you have to contact each of the credit reporting companies, and it's whether or not you can get that credit freeze, how much it's going to cost, the terms of it are determined by the law of your state where you live. So, you may want to check around a little bit to find out what those requirements are and what the cost is. Sometimes that information is on the credit reporting company's website. You can also go onto the website of the National Association of Attorneys General, NAAG.org. That gives you contact information for every state attorney general. And if you click on the link for your state attorney general, you can probably find information about how to get a credit freeze in your state. And then you'll know how much it's going to cost you, what the terms are, anything else that you need to know, how you lift it when you want to lift it, if there's any deadlines or time frames for that. And that might help you determine whether you think it's a good fit for you or whether you want to do it or not. And then once you have that information, you call each of those credit reporting companies and let them know you want to put the credit freeze on, and you pay whatever the fee is. All right, so that's the first step, the initial fraud alert. Think about your credit freeze. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't. Then you move on to your second step. Okay, so you've contacted that one credit reporting company. You've gotten that fraud alert. That entitles you to get a free copy of your credit report. Okay, To get that free copy, you have to contact each of the credit reporting companies. You can't just contact one and get the free credit reports. So you want to go back to that fraud number, and you want to contact each of the three, tell them you're an identity theft victim, tell them you want the free copy of your credit report. Now, it's important to say those things because everybody's entitled to a free annual credit report, whether you're an identity theft victim or not, and we'll talk about that in a minute and how you can get that. There's a dedicated website and a dedicated telephone number to get that. If you're an identity theft victim, you can get a free copy of your report at any time from the credit reporting companies. But if you don't tell them you're an identity theft victim and you don't ask for your free credit report, they can charge you to buy a credit report. And you don't want to get caught in that and end up having to pay for a credit report when you're entitled to get the free one as an identity theft victim. You don't want to waste your free report. So you get that report. It's probably going to take a little while. You might be able to get it online and get it immediately. You might call and have it mailed to you or emailed to you. But when you get it, you want to look at it and you want to see wherever there's mistaken information. It could be from your address, prior addresses, accounts that you didn't open, charges that you don't recognize that they say are outstanding on your existing accounts. There could be a lot of different things on there. You want to look through it, and you want to make a note of anything that doesn't seem correct or mistaken. Sometimes it might be just a simple mistake. Other times it might be an error due to the identity theft. It could be something that you never charged and is appearing on your credit report. So you want to go through there, and you want to mark that up, and you're going to send it back to the credit reporting company and ask them to correct all of those errors on your credit report. Now, you might be able, just from the credit report, you might be able to see that there are businesses that are reporting charges that you didn't make, or there are businesses that opened accounts that you never opened, and you might be able to contact them directly right then and there and tell them, I'm an identity theft victim, this isn't my account, please close it, or this isn't my charge, please remove it. And there may be some mechanism for them to keep an eye on that account or to flag it, to be alert for any other signs of fraud. It depends. With the businesses may have special forms for you to use, or maybe you just need to call them and then follow up with that letter, because you always want to follow up with a letter so you have something in writing. And I'll show you some materials that FTC has developed that have some sample letters that you can use for these kinds of disputing charges for different businesses or with the credit reporting companies to make it even easier. You can just use that form letter, fill in your information, and then send it out. All right, so now the third step is to create an identity theft report. There's a couple different steps here, but it's an important tool because with an identity theft report, it gives you certain rights that you don't have otherwise as an identity theft victim. You can get fraudulent information removed from your credit report. You can stop a company from collecting debts that result from the identity theft. And that company can't then turn it around and sell it to a different debt collection company and make their money that way, and then just let that other debt collection company pursue you. With that identity theft report, the debt collectors are supposed to stop pursuing you. You can put an extended fraud alert on your credit report, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And you can also, it gives you a right to get more information from the various companies about the accounts that the thief opened. That gives you more pieces of the puzzle. It can help you close down other accounts or see where there might be other damage if you can get that information from those businesses. All right, so this is how you create an identity theft report. First, you want to file a complaint with the FTC. So you can do that by going to ftc.gov/complaint. That's a computer-generated complaint system that walks you through step by step, screen by screen, and it'll ask you for information about how much money you lost or that you estimate you lost, what accounts were tampered with, were there new accounts that were opened, were there problems with your checking account, or their debt collectors calling you. It walks you through a lot of detail. And you can file the complaint and fill in as much as you know. And if necessary, you find out more information, you can call back. You can't go back online. You can only go online that first time. But you could call back, and a counselor will help you fill in the additional information. The reason that's important is that when you finish filing your FTC complaint, whether you call or whether you go online, you can then get a copy of what's called your FTC affidavit. your complaint information then goes into a form that's the FTC Identity Theft Affidavit. You can use that affidavit to go to the police and get a police report. You can file a police report with or without that affidavit, but the affidavit, it helps because there's already a good amount of detail. And for some, in some states, police have to take your identity theft report, okay? It all depends on what the state law requires. And again, you can go to naag.org, National Association of Attorneys General. If you really wanted to find out what the law is in your state, what's required, you could go check it there. In some jurisdictions, the police aren't going to take a report about identity theft. They feel like it's not within their jurisdiction. You can ask for a miscellaneous incidents report. Miscellaneous incidents. If they still don't want to give you the police report, you can try a different police station in that jurisdiction, the sheriff's department, state police, sometimes even a federal authority, federal police would be willing to give you that report. So no matter where you go, if you take that FTC ID theft affidavit with you and an FTC's memo to law enforcement, which is also in some of the materials that I've spoken about that I'll show you. Those two things, that FTC affidavit and that memo, should be enough information and enough legitimacy to get the police to give you that police report. So they'll fill out the police report, they'll give you a number, and then you're going to take that police report, take a copy of it, and staple it to your FTC affidavit. That gives you your identity theft report. That's enough detail to be able to then go to companies and dispute various things, and you have your history as an identity theft victim laid out right there, and you don't have to recreate the wheel all the time. You give them the identity theft report, and that should give them enough information to take some action to correct some of the problems. Now let me backtrack a little and tell you, if you're going to file a complaint with the FTC, you want to go to ftc.gov/complaint, and then it'll ask you if you're an identity theft victim, and then it takes you off to the screens that are about an identity theft victim. And when you're finished filing your complaint, you'll have a choice to print it out as your FTC ID theft affidavit. You click that, you can save it to your computer, and then print it out, and you have your copies. If you'd rather talk to somebody, or if you want to update your complaint, you call 1-877-438-4338. 1-877-438-4338. That's the special counseling line for identity theft victims where you can report identity theft there. The counselor, after they take all of your information, will give you, they'll get your email and give you like a passcode and send you a link, and you click on that link, and your identity theft affidavit will be there, and you can save it and print it the same way. Okay. So that gives you those 3 steps that you need to do right away. There will be other steps. Those are the immediate things that you need to do, and it's sort of beyond the scope of what we can talk about in an hour. But again, I'll show you the materials that FTC has that you can get if you need more information about it. But from there on, after that, there are other things that can crop up that would be sort of your next steps. There could be problems with it that arise with your checking account or with an ATM card, with other credit cards that haven't been reported on the credit report yet, student loans, investments. There are all kinds of ways where identity theft might affect you, maybe not, but if you need to, we've got places, checklists, and the information about where you can call or get more information or how you can start to rectify the problem if it gets to that. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about 2 of the twists on identity theft, slightly newer ones that people might not know quite so much about. The first one is medical identity theft. So a medical identity theft thief is going to steal your personal information, and they're going to, bill insurers by making fraudulent claims. Okay, so they're going to use up your insurance benefits by making claims for themselves, and they may get treatment, even surgery, using your health insurance number, possibly even your credit cards. So obviously the issue is they're depleting your insurance benefits. It could lead to other forms of identity theft. But also, the medical records of the identity thief are going to be mingled in with your medical records. And that, of course, is a big problem. If they're getting a particular prescription and it's in your medical records that you're actually taking that prescription, your doctor may be confused, or there may be other issues and other prescriptions that you're supposed to be taking, and you don't want your medical records to be mixed up with somebody else's. So how you would deal with this, initially you would get copies of your medical records and you would try to correct those errors. So under federal law, you do have a right to know what's in your medical files. You would just have to contact each doctor, clinic, hospital, pharmacy, labs, health plans, wherever you think the thief has used your information. So you'll probably want to take, you'll have to pay for those copies most likely. And it could be an overwhelming amount of information depending on how much medical activity you've had in a given amount of time, and how much medical activity the thief has conducted. It could be a lot of paperwork. So you probably want to start with a limited search and go to the doctor or the hospital, the clinic, whoever, the medical provider that you think provided services in error, or you think where your information was misused. You want to start there, and if you think you can narrow down when you think the activity occurred with identity theft, it was within the last 6 months, within the last year, you just want to ask for records for the last year from that particular medical provider. And that'll give you some clues and perhaps lead you to other things, or confirm that this was a more limited circumstance. And you can get your medical records corrected. You want to write to the doctor or the provider and ask for a change in your records and tell them this doesn't relate to you and you never got this treatment and you need to have this removed from your medical records. So in some situations, a provider might refuse to give you copies of your medical records or your billing records because they think that it's going to violate the identity thief's privacy rights. They may not be sure who's who. But that's mistaken. You have the right to know what's in your file, and they have to give it to you. And if they deny your request, you have a right to appeal it. So you know how you get a privacy notice when you go to the doctor most times now? There's usually a contact person that's listed in those notices of privacy practices. Sometimes there's a patient representative. They're often called an ombudsman. You want to go to them and tell them that you need to appeal this and you want some help with it. Ask for your file, and very often they can help you. And there are other things that you can do to try to track that down and try to get them to provide it. All right. And then, depending on what you find in your medical records, if it's confirmed that somebody has used your identity to get medical treatment and to bilk the insurance, you may want to then go back through and do the steps for identity theft victims in general, getting the fraud alert, getting your credit report, and then getting the identity theft report, because there may already be problems brewing with your credit if somebody's already stolen that information and used it. And if they haven't, you'll be able to stop it before it happens by getting those protections in place. All right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was tax-related identity theft. This is one of those forms of identity theft that's growing very rapidly. It accounted for a very large percentage of the identity theft complaints that FTC received last year. Generally, it means somebody has misused your Social Security number. So they may be, somebody may have used your Social Security number to get a job, and then their employer is reporting their earnings. So then it looks like you're earning money that you didn't report, and that you may be in trouble for tax liability that you haven't reported. The other situation that can arise is that somebody's used that Social Security number and they file for a refund. They file their taxes and they get your refund back. Either way, you're probably going to get a notice from the IRS that says, you didn't report this income, why not? Or, why are you filing to get a refund? We've already given you a refund. So what you want to do, I think this is common sense to most people, that if you get a notice from the IRS, you want to contact them immediately and try to work something out and try to get information and figure out what the situation is. The IRS now has, so if there's a name and a number on that notice that you get from them, you want to start with that person. But you probably also want to reach out to the IRS's Identity Protection Specialized Unit. IRS is aware that this is a problem, and they've set up a unit to help people sort through these problematic tax refunds and to flag certain accounts and to help people file their returns if they've been flagged as an identity theft victim, and to get their refunds if it was mistakenly provided to an identity thief. So to get to that specialized unit, just go to irs.gov, and in the search bar, search on identity theft, and it'll pop up. You can also call 1-800-908-4490. 1-800-908-4490. All right. Now, here's the last little twist on ID theft that I'm going to talk about, and that is child identity theft. So, the thinking generally has always been, a child isn't going to have a credit report. They're not able to contract, they're not able to have a job generally, except in certain limited circumstances. And so they're probably not, if they don't have credit, they're not going to have a credit file or a credit history credit report. So that means an identity thief, if they've been able to get a child's Social Security number and misuse it, they could probably use it for quite a long time before anybody discovered it. So if you're in that situation, and you want to find out if there is a credit report for your minor child. And so what you want to do is contact the 3 credit reporting companies that we talked about, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and you want to see if your child has a credit report. So the effective way to do that is to ask for a manual search based only on your child's Social Security number. Because if they check the name, nothing is probably going to pop up. If somebody's probably not using their name, they're using their own name or some other alias with the Social Security number. So you want to search on that Social Security number, and that's when something unexpected might pop up. Now, there's special numbers to call for this, different than the ones that we had talked about. For Equifax and Experian, there's a telephone number. For TransUnion, there's an email. They take all the child identity theft requests through email, and it's childidtheft@transunion.com. Childidtheft@transunion.com. So they may need copies of the child's birth certificate listing the parents' names, the child's Social Security card, some kind of government-issued ID card like a passport or a driver's license or a military ID, something that proves that you're the parent or the legal guardian, and then proof of address like a utility bill or credit card or insurance statement, something like that, so that they can verify that you're the parent and you can get that credit report. And if, so hopefully you don't find anything. And if you have a child who's soon going to be 16 years old, it's probably a good idea to do this preemptively, to just go ahead and ask for that manual search to be done, and hopefully you won't find anything and you'll be good. If you already know that there's a credit report out there and the child has some identity theft problem, or if you do this search and you find a credit report and you see there's a problem, what you want to do is very similar to what you would do for an adult identity theft victim, but slightly different. You want to contact each of the 3 credit reporting companies, go back to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and you want to ask them to remove all accounts, inquiries, collection notices, everything associated with that child's name or personal information, and then explain that the child is a minor, and you send them a copy of a form that you fill out called the Uniform Minor's Status Declaration. Again, that's in the sample forms in this publication I'm going to show you in a little while, so you can get that form there. Then you want to put a fraud alert on the child's account and get the free credit report so that you can check it and and see what's actually on there and take whatever action you need to. And you want to go to the businesses that open the new accounts and get them closed and explain the whole situation. It's child identity theft. Create the identity theft report. Think about the credit freeze. It's all the things that you would think about for an adult victim. And you should go through those for the child victim. All right. So here's a special protection that is just for service members that I wanted to make sure that you knew about. If you're deployed or you're about to be, and you're not going to be looking for new credit, say perhaps you're leaving family behind and they're all set, they've got credit and they don't have to worry about it, or you're not thinking about buying a house or a car or getting a credit card or anything while you're deployed, then you're probably okay. You want to put an active duty alert on your credit reports. And you do that by calling the fraud companies, the fraud numbers of those 3 nationwide reporting companies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. And you tell them you want an active duty alert, and you've got to give them some kind of proof of identity, like your a driver's license or your military ID, birth certificate, something like that. The one company that you call has to call the other 2. And then that means that creditors have to go through extra steps to verify identity before they grant credit in your name. So it's a little bit of peace of mind that you don't have to worry about people trying to ping your report and get credit in your name while you're away and you're deployed, otherwise occupied. The active duty alert lasts for a year, but you can extend it if your tour has been extended and you're going to be deployed longer. You can appoint somebody to be your agent, so a spouse or family member, friend, whoever, you can appoint them to be the one that helps manage that active duty alert so they can place it or extend it or lift it if it's going to be inconvenient for you to do that if you're away. And again, you want to keep good records of when you asked for it and keep a timeline so that you know that if you're going to need to extend it after a year, that you can remember to do that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about identity protection, reducing your risk. So one of the biggest things that you can do is to make protecting your information part of your routine. If you make it a habit, then you're much more likely to keep up with it, to do it all the time, and to know the lay of the land, to know what's out there, to know what information people have about you, to know what you should change and correct, to even know when your bills are due, to know when they come in. If you know that you get a particular bill, you make a note of it, you write it on your calendar so you don't have to keep it in your head, just something that you can look at and see and remind yourself. You know when your 4 big bills of the month come in and you don't see them on time, you can inquire if they're a day late or 2 days late rather than it being 2 weeks. You might be able to prevent a lot of damage from happening if you can get to it right away. All right, so first you want to protect your information, make it part of your routine, lock up your financial documents, any of your records, keep them in a safe at home or just a safe place, just some place where you can lock it up. When you're at work, lock up your wallet and your ID. Limit what you carry. When you go out, you don't want to carry every single card you have, every bit of identity, you need your driver's license, but you don't want to carry every bit of identity, identification card that you have. You don't need to carry your Social Security card around. You want to keep that locked up. Little things, if you can, pick up your checks at the bank. Don't have them sent in the mail so that somebody doesn't have a chance to pick them up. If they're going to be delivered into a secured box that's locked, that's great. You don't want to leave too much mail lying around. You want to try to take it to a mailbox if you can. If you're going to go on vacation, you're going to be away for a while, put a hole in your mail. It's pretty easy to do. You can go to the local post office, USPS.com/holdmail, or there are numbers that you can call to get your mail held for a little while. You want to shred sensitive documents whenever you can rather than just throwing them away. And that's the same thing with your medical information. You want to be careful about prescription bottles that you throw away. Make sure that there's not a lot of information on them. Scrape the label off and shred it before you toss away the bottle. Now let's talk a little bit about those free credit reports that I had mentioned. If you're an identity theft victim, you're going to be able to get that free credit report. You can always buy your credit report. But everybody, no matter who they are, whether they're an identity theft victim or not, everybody has the right under the law to get one free credit report every 12 months from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. To get that free credit report, you have to go to annualcreditreport.com. Annualcreditreport.com. So strongly encourage everybody to do that because it's free, it's not too hard, and it's an opportunity for you to see what's in that credit report and to be familiar with it. So that if a problem arises at some point, you already know what's in there, you have a good idea of what to expect, those mistakes are going to jump out at you a lot more quickly. I suggest that you stagger those requests so that you go to one credit reporting company, say in January, go to another one in June, go to the next one in November, or just stagger it somehow so that every 3-4 months you're getting one of your credit reports. They're not going to be identical, but they're going to be very, very, very similar. They'll each report something slightly different, or they might be on a different timeline. They may be reporting some accounts that the other ones don't report, but they'll be very, very similar. And if you order them all, say in January, at the beginning of the year, chances are you're not going to see that credit report again until the next January when you're entitled to your next free credit report. Well, a lot can happen in the interim there. So if you stagger it, then at some point you're always getting some view of some snapshot of your credit file, and chances are if you see a problem in April, then it's probably going to creep into those other 2 reports later in the year as well. You can nip it in the bud. You can get started on resolving it rather than waiting 6 or 7 months to get to the problem. So annualcreditreport.com is the place you want to go. There's also a telephone number, too, that is in the materials that I will share with you. It's 1-877-322-8228. 1-877-322-8228. And again, you can order these materials and you'll have all that information there. All right, so like I said, get into the habit of protecting the information, shredding it. When your account statements come in, read them right away, whether it's bank, credit, utility accounts, other kinds of accounts, your explanation of medical benefits. When that comes in, take a look at it. Make sure that you know what's in there and that you recognize everything that's in there. Somebody made the suggestion to me that when you have a medical appointment, you should just jot it down in a calendar so that when your medical benefits come in, you can look at it and you can compare that to your calendar, because you might not remember that you went to a particular doctor in February and the explanation of benefits comes through months later. You're not sure, did I take my son there, or did I go to that doctor, or what was what? If you sort of keep that notated someplace, that you're much more likely to remember it. And again, you want to shred all documents that have any personal or financial information before you throw them away. You want to protect your computer, too. You want to create strong passwords. That usually means some combination of uppercase and lowercase letters and numbers, special symbols. Don't use words that could be guessed about you, like your kids' names, your pets' names, birthdays. What some folks like to do is to think of a very distinctive phrase that they can remember, like, I love to see the Pacific Ocean, and then either take out all of the vowels and just leave the consonants, or just use the first letter of every word as your password, but just to play around a little bit and make it relatively easy for you to remember, but almost impossible for somebody else to guess, even using special software. You want to use security software. So you want to make sure that that you've got protection, antivirus, anti-spyware, a firewall. You want to have all that stuff, and you want to keep it up to date, and you want it to up to date automatically. Same thing, you want to keep your operating system, your browser, and any other security software up to date. You want to make sure that you have the most current, and you want it to update automatically so you don't have to think to do it. All right, so these are some of the publications that I had mentioned during the course of the presentation. Right now we're in the process of, we've just revised and updated all of our identity theft materials, and including the website. And we're about to launch those into sort of a kickoff, make them public next week. So you're getting like a little sneak peek of our new materials. And we'll have a special launch page where you can see the materials. We've got 3 new videos, which if you'd like to take a look at them, about different aspects of identity theft. The publications are Taking Charge, What to Do If Your Identity is Stolen, Safeguarding Your Child's Future, which is about child ID theft. Taking Charge is the big publication that has got all the forms, the sample letters, in detail tips, checklists for each of these different kinds of identity theft, each of the different kinds of problems that you might run into, so that you can go down the list and check off what you need to do as you do it. Identity theft, What to Know, What to Do. That's a very small brochure. It's great for, you can order free copies, but it's also very easy to copy if you wanted to hand it out to people, if you wanted to do an event or give it to other folks to teach them about identity theft. So you can get any of these materials at ftc.gov/idtheft. And if you log on next week, it's going to look like this branding, these colors. You can also order any of these publications online at bulkorder.ftc.gov. Again, that'll start next week. You'll be able to get on there and order those materials. You can order, 50, 100, whatever, to give out to friends, family, colleagues, or if you want to have your own identity theft awareness event. Again, if you want to file an identity theft complaint with the FTC, go to ftc.gov/complaint, or you can go to 1-877-ID-THEFT. That's the same number I gave you earlier, just with ID theft standing in for the numbers, make it a little easier to remember. More information about identity theft is ftc.gov/ID-THEFT, and there's the link to go to our bulk order website to order more. All of our materials are free, and they're in the public domain. So you can order copies, hand them out to folks. You can cut and paste the information, put it onto your website, onto a social network. You can tweet it. You can put it in newsletters. You can take the publication, put a label on it, and hand it out to people. You can do whatever you want with it. We just want it to go out to as many people as possible if folks need it to prevent identity theft or to rectify the damage. So that's the end of my prepared remarks, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody's got any.
Yes, Carol, we do have one question that came in. The question reads, if you get a notice that your personal information has been compromised by the government, military, or hospital that you have used with a message that they are investigating, should you follow up with the guidelines you have presented?
Yeah, it used to be, we used to tell people, well, it couldn't hurt, wait and see, and then if you think that there's a problem, check your accounts and then go through these steps. I think now, it happens so much, and people really want it, they feel kind of helpless, they want to know what they should do. I think if you think your information has been breached, I would at least go ahead and order my credit report and take a look at it, because you're entitled to get that free credit report every once a year. But even if you've just ordered one in January, you probably have just looked at it, you might be able to order one in another couple of months and take a look. You could put a fraud alert on your credit report. You may not have to go to the extent of getting your identity theft report. But if you're starting to see suspicious activity and you know that your information was breached at some point, you probably want to go and do all 3 steps and then and act as if you were a victim already. I don't think you have to jump immediately to all 3, but I would at least take a look at my credit report and then consider whether I want to put an initial fraud alert on my credit report.
Okay, Carol, how long do the investigations normally take?
What kind of investigations? I need a little
I guess for it just says how long does the investigations normally take? I guess for like a investigation for fraud or um,
Well, I'll tell you, when you file a complaint with the FTC, you don't get assigned a counselor number, and nobody does like an investigation into your particular case. We're collecting that information so that other jurisdictions like police or criminal authorities can perhaps gather the information and be able to track down an identity thief that way, and they may bring cases. FTC doesn't have criminal authority, so we're not bringing cases about identity theft. We're sort of the clearinghouse of all information about identity theft. But how it helps us is to know, for instance, to know that tax-related identity theft is an issue. That came to our attention through our complaint. And so filing a complaint with the FTC is helpful so that we can see how things are changing and develop the tips and the resources for people to avoid it in the first place, and then provide the complaints to the criminal authorities that can investigate. That can really depend. If you're part of a giant identity theft ring, it may take a while for them to investigate it, but they may actually be able to nail those people and sometimes even get a little bit of money back.
Okay, the next question reads, regarding children, if you do not expect fraud, should you still check annually? If so, what age should you start checking? You mentioned 16 years old. What about younger?
We didn't want people to feel like they needed to go and get the manual search done, every single year, if you've got a 5-year-old that you need to do it every year. I think it's probably a good idea if the child approaches 16, because at that point, they're starting to think about, they're old enough to maybe start to get their own job, and if there's a credit report out there that's not theirs, it's going to start causing them trouble, and it gives them a chance to get it all cleaned up by the time they're ready to either get a job, apply for financial aid, maybe get a car loan, do the different things that you're going to start doing when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, whether they're going to go on to school or whether they're going to work. It might affect whether they get a job or not. So it's important that they do it as you start to approach 15, 16, that age. There's no harm in doing it earlier if you'd like. I don't think people need to feel panicked that they have to do it immediately. But if you're the organized type and you like to stay on top of things, you might as well do one now, and then maybe just set a reminder for yourself to check it periodically.
That was all the questions that we had, Carol. Did you have any last comment that you wanted to make before we close?
No, I just want to encourage everybody. I know it's a little weird not to be able to check out the website right now, but I wanted to give folks a sneak peek as we were coming out with all these new materials. But definitely next week when we launch, go on to ftc.gov/idtheft, check out the new materials, and order stuff from the bulk order website to give out to folks. I think you'll find it helpful.
Well, thank you, Carol, for sharing your invaluable experience and expertise. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. If you didn't get a chance to submit a question before or during the webinar, you can still do so by emailing moswebinars@militaryOneSource.com, and your questions will be forwarded to Carol. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.